Hormonal imbalance can make the transition to menopause very difficult. Welcome to another episode of the Mental Health Break. Karen Polanchek joins me today to talk about how she, at the age of 54, feels better than she did before menopause, all thanks to the changes that she was forced to make. Through nutritional and hormonal support, Karen learned how to create balance in her hormones as well as her life. Hi, I'm Dr. Nafisa Sekandari, a licensed clinical psychologist specializing in anxiety-based disorders. I created the Mental Health Break podcast to give you simple, actionable, step-by-step strategies to help you prioritize your mental health. Mental illness can cost you time and money. Ignoring your symptoms will only make the problems worse. Taking time out of your busy day to dedicate to improving your mental health can lead to long-term health and wellness. In this podcast, each week you'll learn tips, tricks, and proven strategies to help you regain control of your life, all while prioritizing your mental health. If you want to improve your life, regain control of your mental health, and feel empowered, you're in the right place. Let's get started. Today's episode is brought to you by the Transforming Anxiety course, an online, self-paced anxiety course to help you manage and control your anxiety from the comfort, privacy, and convenience of your own home. Learn how to transform your anxiety in just 6 short weeks. Course registration is now open. To learn more, visit transforminganxiety.com/course. I am so excited to talk to Karen Polanchek about creating a healthy menopausal transition with proper nutrition and self-care. Karen Polanchek is a functional nutritional therapy practitioner in Bothell, Washington. At the age of 48, Karen experienced a divorce, a death in the family, a move, and final exams, all within 3 months, all of which threw her into early menopause. Despite telling herself that she was fine, she ended up exhausting her adrenal glands with her tendency to overexercise and remaining in denial. Karen spent 3 months in bed with adrenal exhaustion, depression, panic attacks, and eventually suicidal thoughts. Karen used nutritional therapy along with meditation and Kundalini yoga to cope with her grief and self-care. Her nutritional therapist worked with her every month to provide brain and hormonal support. Currently, at the age of 54, Karen reports having more energy and feeling happier than ever. Hi, Karen. Thank you for being here, and thank you for being on this podcast and agreeing to talk about your story.
Thank you. Thank you for having me. I'm happy to be here.
So briefly, before we started, I shared a little bit about your background, but can you tell me a little bit about the stress level that you were in at the age of 48 and how that threw you into menopause? Did you ever figure out what the reason was, or was it just stress related?
I believe that it was stress related. I did have a birth control device that I think could have contributed to that, but essentially I think it was what is called the pregnenolone steal, where all my nutrients were going to help me through my trauma. And so that was the onset of menopause.
So was that related to your adrenal exhaustion? And then can you tell us a little bit about what caused that steal besides that? Do you think it was birth control related?
I think it could have been initially because I think that was pretty new and traumatic for my body. And I think overall it was probably the stress of my marriage. It wasn't going well. And I think that was the onset of my being drained of nutrition and drained of nutrients.
And then you also mentioned in your bio just the adrenal exhaustion that you had. And I know a lot of women push themselves really hard until they do burn out. Were you the type that was like a type A personality, just always go, go, go and overdoing it and burning the candle at both ends? And do you think that contributed to your adrenal exhaustion?
Yes, absolutely. I was definitely over-exercising and constantly toying with my diet. So I would go on and off different food programs and undereat and overeat and go on and off of sugar. And definitely over exercising. So yeah, I agree with that. I think it was kind of a cascade effect. And looking back now, I think that a lot of it also, what contributed to that was my intense sugar addiction.
So you actually actively decided to get off all sugars, and that made a difference for you?
I did. I mean, I have a super long history of food addiction. I've been addicted to sugar and food since I was little. But when I got married, I started to make the connection between sugar and rage. And once I saw that, I thought, oh, every time I yell and scream at my husband, it's the direct result of a sugar binge the night before. So that was the beginning where I decided to go to Overeaters Anonymous because I wanted to save my marriage. And that was the beginning of correlating my food addiction with my mood.
And I know there is a direct connection between that because when you're feeding yourself a lot of sugar, you're increasing the bad bacteria in your gut, and then the craving kind of continues, right? But
Yes.
also, when our gut isn't balanced and our hormones are not balanced, we are going to feel more anxious, more stressed, and our adrenals end up giving out. And so I know in my practice, a lot of women between the age of 35 to 50 and get diagnosed with anxiety and depression. And it's really because their hormone levels are changing and shifting. And instead of focusing on balancing the hormones, they give them anti-anxiety medication, antidepressants, and not really addressing the hormonal imbalance. Were you aware of your hormonal imbalance earlier before the age of 48?
No, I wasn't. And I didn't go to nutritional therapy school until just shortly after that, to the middle of the end of my marriage. However, I was on antidepressants and anti-anxiety medications, myriad, for approximately 13 years. And I went off of all of that, I would say in 2008. So when I was about 40, and I started to notice that I was kind of flatline. And I thought, I don't really feel much of anything. And I thought, I'm going off all of this and I'm going to figure out how to cope all on my own. So I had spent years off of all of my meds, but I didn't have any other help either. I was just kind of winging it and doing it on my own. So I didn't understand anything about hormones until I got into nutritional therapy school.
That brings me to my next question. Can you tell us a little bit about what nutritional therapy is and what it means to you, but also how it helped you with balancing your symptoms?
So I attended the Nutritional Therapy Association here in Seattle, Washington, and we would work on each other's bodies and do kinesiology and muscle testing. We specialize in gut health, adrenal health, and the gut brain connection. So once I started going to school, we started food journaling and helping each other with our food journals. And we also started muscle testing each other. And that was when I first started to put this pituitary, hypothalamus, gut health, thyroid, adrenal, the HPA axis, all together into this beautiful flowing system that I had never understood or heard of before.
So, how do you do that? What exactly does that look like? I know that you said you focused on that, but what are some steps that you actually took, actionable steps that actually helped you that might benefit somebody listening?
Yeah. So once I got into school, then I started to work outside of school with one of the leaders there in the class who did muscle testing and nutritional therapy at her office. So once I started working with her and she was doing kinesiology and muscle testing with me, it seemed to be that I needed DHEA, vitamin D, vitamin C, and I needed minerals. I was minerally depleted, and sugar robs the body of minerals. It takes a lot of minerals for our bodies to process as much sugar as I was eating. Then I had this menopause piece going on. And I also had fatigue, lethargy. I had really heavy legs, felt like my legs were tree trunks and I couldn't do much. Once she got me on this hypothalamus and pituitary supplement, DHEA, vitamin D, C, and multiminerals, it's like the pathways between my brain and my gut and my adrenals and adrenal supplements. And she insisted I had zero caffeine. I actually came alive. I felt like I was alive again. I felt like I could bounce around and walk briskly and maybe even jog. And I started doing some hot yoga. And I just didn't know how depleted I was. until I started seeing her. So the main things she got me on were a hypothalamus pituitary support, DHEA, vitamin C, multimineral, and adrenal support.
I know you mentioned muscle testing, and I've heard a lot about muscle testing, and I know that some people use it to understand where the depletion is. Can you give an example of what that looks like? I know that it's such a woo-woo concept for some people. They don't understand it. I didn't understand it until I started seeing more and learning more about it, but I still am kind of confused. Can you share a little bit about what that looks like and how we can use it to help us make decisions about what our body needs?
So, muscle testing has been around a long time, and there are many, many schools and different practitioners who invented different techniques. And there are a lot of different places to learn the technique of muscle testing through different programs and different teachers. So, at the Nutritional Therapy Association, we focused on just a couple of techniques that came from 2 or 3 different founding fathers. And each organ has a muscle or a system that it's correlated with that creates a communication system to the brain. So for example, we could use a quadricep muscle will give us the indication of how the small intestine is doing. And it's really miraculous. And it has been proven to work. And there is a scientific background to it. And like, for instance, I would have a client on my massage table and she would be lying down and I would press on her quadricep muscle if she lifts her leg, and her quadricep muscle might go weak and she can't hold her leg up against my pressure. Then she puts her hand on her belly button over her small intestine and her quadricep magically becomes very strong and I could never push it down. And that is an indication that her small intestine needs support. So when I push on it and her quadricep goes down, that means that the small intestine correlated with the quadricep muscle is not communicating with the brain. And once we support the small intestine and the quadricep gets stronger, that means that the small intestine and the brain are now communicating, and it's energetic. So when her hand goes over her small intestine, she's giving her small intestine love and support and energy, and it magically makes the muscles stronger. And the brain is saying, I hear you, I get it, you need something. So then we would put supplements on her tummy and watch her quadricep get strong. If her quadricep goes weak, that is a supplement that doesn't work for her quadricep. And the same thing goes with food. So I could put gluten on her tummy and her quadricep muscle would go weak. Or I could put coconut oil on her tummy and her quadricep muscle would get strong. And that's how we do food and supplement testing. And all different organs have a different muscle.
Wow, that's so fascinating. That's all part of energy medicine, isn't it?
It is, yes.
And I know just like acupuncture, we all know now, scientifically, we know that it works. It's been proven to work, but we really don't have an idea of how acupuncture works. It's the same thing with muscle testing and energy medicine, correct?
Yes, it's miraculous, the energy. And I can hold gluten away from someone's body, maybe 5-6 feet away from their body, and their quadricep muscle will still go weak. And that's an indication that they can't even be around. They shouldn't even go down the bread aisle.
Wow.
So it's really mysterious and miraculous.
Well, everything is energy. Even Einstein proved that everything is energy. We're energy and we're constantly reacting to the energetic fields around us, right? And so that makes sense in that if we're around a negative energy, we're going to react. Sometimes we're not even aware we're reacting.
That's right.
Have you ever used pendulums? I just discovered how they work, and I think they're fun. Right now, they're just a gimmicky thing for me. I really don't know what I'm doing with it, but I'm amazed with how, without me doing anything, it's kind of doing its own thing. So have you ever used a pendulum, and do you want to talk a little bit about that?
I have, and probably similar to you. I have not put all my stock into it, but I have used it, and I have felt pretty good about the results that I got. And I tried to remain neutral, but I have one that I hold above my head and it sways and it's very still and neutral. And I can ask a question. And if it goes left to right, that's a yes. And if it goes back and forth, forward and backward, it's a no. The other thing I've done is used my body as a pendulum. So I'll just stand up and ask a question and notice how my body sways. And if I go right to left, it feels like a yes to me. And if I go forward and backward, it's a no to me. And so I've used a hanging pendulum and then my body.
That is so interesting. I remember I took a pendulum to a family gathering one time, and everybody, for a while, everybody was just making fun of it, like this isn't real. And then they started doing it on their own, and they became believers. So, pretty amazing stuff. This is a lot of things that people don't know about, and we're kind of scared of it because we don't have enough information. But I think giving it a chance could open up a lot of different worlds for us, right? A lot of different awareness and information. As far as like the kind of work that you do, if people wanted to do muscle testing, who would they go to for help in that department?
That's a great question. A person could go to the Nutritional Therapy Association website, and all of us practitioners are listed on there. So they could pick a practitioner, a graduate. Also, a lot of chiropractors do muscle testing, and chiropractic work and nutritional therapy go well together because the chiropractor, sometimes people need adjustments, and that maybe a cervical spine adjustment can kind of open the gut brain connection. And so we do a little bit of work pairing with chiropractors, and a lot of chiropractors are very good at it, at muscle testing. They've taken advanced training and they do both. And then also Googling functional nutritional therapy practitioners or NTPs, and then also contacting me. I'm happy to talk about that with anybody who wants to learn more about it. So I think those are the three things I could think of the most: chiropractors who do muscle testing, functional nutritional therapy practitioners, and the Nutritional Therapy Association.
Thank you. That's really good information for people that might be interested in looking into that more. Given that you've gone through menopause and you've done it through the nutritional therapy, what's your opinion about bioidentical hormones as a way to balance the hormones? Have you used them, and what are your thoughts about it?
Let's see. So that is a fantastic question. I did not use hormones. I used very high quality supplements that supported my hormone imbalance and supported my stress and adrenal fatigue. I didn't ever end up needing anything to address my thyroid. That seemed to be just fine. And my school of thought is that thyroid oftentimes stems from tired adrenals. So the adrenals drag the thyroid around. So I didn't have that going on, fortunately, nor did I get into something like Hashimoto's or needing some thyroid support. That said, I think there can be a time and a place for bioidenticals because sometimes they can jumpstart somebody's feeling better and getting back on track. And I think they've come a long way. And that a person could go on them to get the ball rolling to the healing process. But I think that 3 months of bioidenticals should be plenty. Then a person could transition over into healing supplements. So my honest belief about that is that bioidenticals and hormone replacement therapy do the job for the organs, and then the organs kind of get locked in a basement. It's like the hormone comes in and is a conductor. Our endocrine system, to me, feels like an orchestra. It's a beautiful, beautiful orchestra that plays well together. And when we get thrown into menopause or perimenopause, the orchestra is in mayhem. So a bioidentical or hormone replacement therapy can come in and it's the new conductor and it says, all right, everybody to the basement. I'm taking charge. The adrenals, the thyroid, the hypothalamus, the endocrine system goes to the basement. Then if we stay on the hormone replacement therapy or bioidenticals, the thyroid and the adrenals don't really get to do their job. So we eventually still present adrenal fatigue symptoms and thyroid dysfunction symptoms, like hair loss, fatigue, cortisol issues, and so forth. Whereas if we go off of the hormone replacement therapy and bioidenticals and start replacing with supplements, we're nourishing the endocrine organs and glands. So I have worked with people helping them get off of bioidenticals and replace them with supplements, and they do turn their health around. when a person goes off of those after years and years, so some people can be on hormone replacement therapy or bioidenticals for 10 or 15 years. When they go off, the orchestra comes back out of the basement and they don't know what they're doing and they're lost and confused and they don't know what to play or where to sit or what their job is. So that's where we need a lot of nutritional therapy to get the orchestra back into smooth sailing. And so it can be mayhem going off of those. So that's where I support clients with weaning off into a supplement protocol that supports the endocrine system so it can get back into harmony.
For a lot of people, it's just all putting a quick Band-Aid, right? Especially when you're going through the menopausal transition and you're having all these issues. And so they're looking for the quickest route. But it sounds like you really did the work of cleaning your gut and supporting yourself nutritionally with supplements. But are there specific foods that you also use that helped you balance your hormones and help you feel better?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, first and foremost, I would have to say getting off of sugar. That was probably the most significant because my adrenals were shot. My brain was just a constant brain fog because I had just trashed my hypothalamus and my hippocampus. So when the hippocampus is the stop sign for the hypothalamus and the cortisol, and they both just get so overwhelmed that I became cortisol resistant. So there's no communication between my hypothalamus and my adrenals. They're just like, I don't know, I'm so exhausted and overwhelmed from all this sugar. I can't tell you what to do. And so I had to get that back into balance and get on some cortisol and some blood sugar support so that I could get this sugar out of my system and clear my brain fog. So that was number one, getting off of sugar and getting off of caffeine. Then after that, I became so good at food journaling, which is one of my specialties that I help my clients with, that I could see the things that were taking me down. And I would say the top two items were gluten and corn. They're neck and neck, but I think I would have to go with gluten would probably be number one. And I would even choose gluten over sugar. Gluten caused me the most depression, anger, suicidal ideation, and fatigue.
Wow. For a lot of people, they have a hard time processing all that. Did you end up eating more greens? Did you change the way you ate, or did you just remove a lot of the things that were causing you issues?
Yeah, that's such a great question. And I really love I adopted through so many modalities. I did EMDR and EFT and tapping and mirror work and food journaling. And I decided one day to stop labeling myself. And I said, I'm not going to say I have depression. And this is just my experience and what worked for me. And I also help my clients too with maybe changing some labels. But what I started to do is say, I don't have depression. My food is making me depressed. And so I started focusing on the foods that made me feel great. So those would be things like a big, beautiful salad with all kinds of vegetables and sprouts and avocado and a piece of salmon. And I felt so satiated that I would make a note of that. And I would say, okay, salads and salmon make me feel fantastic. And then I would do something like zucchini noodles and ground turkey and olives and sauteed kale. And I would notice how I felt. And I would go, wow, I feel fantastic when I eat this. So I started creating professional meal plans and changing my mindset. A lot of my clients say, I already give up so much stuff. I can't give up anymore. And what I do is I help them start to pay attention to all the things we can have. I can live a life with no corn, yeast, wheat, gluten, dairy, or sugar, nuts, seeds, grains. And people say, my word, what do you eat? I eat amazing, beautiful, wonderful food. I focus a lot on vegetables and fish and a little bit of turkey and a lot of avocados and zucchini noodles.
And when you start eating better, you start feeling amazing. Your palate changes and the foods taste really delicious. But a lot of people are focusing on what they're being deprived of instead of the abundance that is available if they open up to trying different foods, right?
Yes.
So giving up sugar is very difficult for a lot of people because sugar activates the same part of your brain that cocaine does. It really hijacks our brain and makes us addicted. There's an addictive component to sugar, and it's very difficult to get away from it. So how did you get rid of sugar? And then what can people do if they want to get started on removing sugar from their diet? And are there alternatives to sugar that they can start incorporating into their diet and reducing their need for sugar in general?
Yes. So good. This is my favorite topic and my specialty. My website is called sugaraddictionrecovery.com. So I have a process that I believe is a really great way to go about it. So there is always the cold turkey quit, stop, boom, you're done. There is that. The thing that I recommend the most is to choose what will take you down the fastest. So for me, it was cane sugar. Cane sugar takes me to depression, anxiety, sleepless nights, and anger like nothing else. So I made a commitment that no matter what, I was not going to eat cane sugar. Now, that means that someone might say, I can have some honey and I can have some stevia and I can have some molasses, and that's fine, but no cane sugar. I think cane sugar is what is so close to crack. I mean, that is what lights us up and ignites us. And I have a cane sugar intolerance. And I have since the day I was born. So it's recognizing that it's not my willpower. It's not that I'm weak. It's not that I'm lazy. It's that I am allergic to cane sugar and it ignites cravings like nobody's business. So it's just my genes. It's not that I'm a failure. It's my genetics. So that's one thing I recommend is picking the one thing that will take you down the fastest. It could be cakes, candies, and cookies, but ultimately it comes to cane sugar and saying, that's my commitment. And once I did that, I could say, well, I can have some stevia in my tea, or I could have some stevia in my apple crumble. And that allowed me to not feel like I was completely deprived of all treats. That's where I would start. The second thing is food journaling. So noticing which items are leading to fatigue, depression, anxiety, brain fog, and start writing those down. The third thing that I think is one of the most impactful, powerful things is prayer. And I pray often to my higher power, and my relatives who have passed on are all sugar addicts, all of them. And I pray and ask for help to keep me off of sugar, and it works. And surrendering and saying, universe, I cannot do this by myself. I cannot let go of sugar by myself. Please help me. So that's where I stand. Picking the number one thing that will take you down the fastest, committing to letting go of that, and recognizing that you're not deprived and it's not total and complete deprivation, and turning it into investigation versus restriction. So I help my clients with adopting a mindset of, well, looky there, that makes me feel horrible, and having some fun with it. And then going, well, looky there, when I have stevia, I have no cravings. It doesn't set me up for cravings and I don't feel deprived. Isn't that great? And we try to have some fun with it and befriend our bodies and work with our bodies as a best friend and say, okay, body, let's figure this out.
It's interesting that I got my blood test as far as food intolerance, and the only thing that came up slightly elevated that I'm intolerant to was cane sugar. And now when I have sugar, I get an instant headache. It affects my sleep. It doesn't make me feel good. And so I've switched over not to stevia, but to monk fruit. I started off with maybe going 50-50 with sugar and monk fruit, and then slowly increasing the monk fruit to the point of no sugar. And that's made a difference for me. I don't know how you feel about that.
I think it's perfection. I think it's just great. I'm really happy for you. And I think that's the key, is the trying, is the checking it out and trying. There's no harm done in giving it a shot, because once we feel a symptom like that, it's like, ooh, I don't want to feel like that. And I think that's how we quit. That's how we get through addictions, in my experience, is getting to the point where the pain outweighs the pleasure.
Right.
and noting that and going, okay, I don't want to feel like that anymore. So when I started experimenting with or started focusing on anxiety, I started noticing I don't have anxiety. I have a caffeine intolerance. I have a sugar intolerance. I have a corn intolerance. I have a YouTube until midnight intolerance. And when I started to notice those things, I cured my anxiety. I mean, I relieved myself of a phenomenal amount of anxiety. It was like, no, I have other things that are causing this. And so then I started experimenting and could bring myself some relief, just like you with the monk fruit. It's like, how do I transition, but still not feel completely deprived of anything that feels like a little pleasure or a treat?
But what I noticed is like I made ice cream with everything. It tasted like ice cream. It was very sweet. I made it with just add cream and I had sugar in there. Everything tasted like ice cream, but because it didn't have any sugar and I wasn't getting that hit, it wasn't satisfying.
Oh,
That was so eye-opening for me because a lot of times we're looking for these foods, not even for the sweetness necessarily, but for that sugar hit. And
yes.
that's what keeps us coming back for more. And the more mindful we are about what we're eating and how we're consuming these quick absorbing sugars, the more we understand how we're being controlled by that addiction, by those cravings, instead of being in control of our choices.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And I know what a hit means because I am a recovering alcoholic and a recovering drug addict and a recovering smoker and a recovering food addict. And I came to this earth for one big hit. So I understand. And I think can be painful too. And it can be traumatic and it can be very sad and lonely to figure out how am I going to get a hit? And so it's like finding other things. And it's really hard to go through the grieving process of, oh, sure, now I have to do yoga. Yoga is going to replace my cake, and just transitioning into giving it a shot. And I think that's where I too started to think about trying things like, let me try mirror work and see what happens. Well, I felt better. Well, let me try Kundalini yoga and chanting and singing at the top of my lungs. I felt better. Let me go for a walk and pray and look outside and open my eyes to the sky. And it's just starting making a list of these things that could give me some sense of a hit.
Well, before you were limited to either the drugs, the alcohol, the food, or the sugar, now you're expanding your world to having so many other things that you can rely on to help you get that hit. And life has a lot of other options besides these quick little hits. And this is why, in my work with transforming anxiety, I go to the root causes of anxiety. I'm not into quick fixes. I'm not into putting a band-aid on your anxiety and making you feel better for the moment. Let's focus on what's making you anxious. And what you said, it's like your gut was intolerant, your brain was intolerant, you weren't getting the rest that you needed. And so you worked at the root causes. And this is why you have better control and management of your symptoms.
Yes, absolutely. And I think supplements can play a role in that too, to balance things out. So sometimes people need that little bit extra help inside, some extra minerals or some soothing vitamins,
I'm a
something that can
big
calm.
fan. Yeah, I'm a big fan
Yeah.
of supplements. I think there are a lot of natural supplements out there that can definitely support us and help us. And we're not addicted to the supplements. We don't have to take them regularly. We can take them as needed if you're doing muscle testing or if you're paying attention to your body, you can adjust these and you can be your own advocate for your mental and physical health, right? And it's just about feeling empowered to do so.
Yes, absolutely.
So I have another question about as we go towards menopause and our hormones are changing, and like you said, our organs are not functioning the way they're supposed to. A lot of people, especially women, are having insulin resistance, which could be because of all the sugar that they're eating due to the stress and self-medicating themselves with it. But also, our insulin receptors weaken as well as we get older. So how do you help with insulin resistance, and how can you reset your battle? Because you actually did that yourself, right? How can we reset our insulin receptors so that we're not bombarded by all the sugar, extra sugar in our system?
Oh, I love it. That's such a great question. And I love that topic as well. And so let's see if I can make this a little bit succinct. So insulin resistance is our cells say, no more, I'm done, I'm not taking any more in, and they close their doors. One of the biggest contributors to insulin resistance is eating often. And we kind of got into this. I need to eat a lot of small meals. That's what we were taught. I was taught I need to eat a lot of small meals. So the sugar industry took over. When fat went away, sugar said, Yahoo, now it's our turn. And I grew up in the 80s and I ate a lot of sugar. And that's when we started to go no fat. So I grew up in the no fat decades as well. So I started to get hypoglycemia because I ate a lot of sugar. I had yogurt and I had scones and I had coffee with vanilla and I had a lot of sugar that I was unaware of. And so I started to get hypoglycemia, and therefore I thought I was supposed to eat often to keep my blood sugar up. So I got myself into insulin resistance because every single time we eat, the body dumps in insulin, to oversimplify. And then 2 hours later, we could say, well, I'm going to have some almonds. And 2 hours later, we could have a latte. And 2 hours later, we could have a little yogurt. Every single time, the body dumps insulin to shuffle around and store blood sugar. So finally, the cells go, I'm done. I can't take any more. I'm full. They close their doors. Then we also don't reap the benefits of our dinner or our proteins or our carbohydrates or our healthy fats because our cells have closed the doors. So that starts to create the sense of fatigue. And it also starts to create the sense of, why don't I feel satisfied? Why don't I feel nourished? Because our cells aren't taking in anything. So that is my simplified explanation to how we can get ourselves into insulin resistance. How we can turn that around is noticing, do I feel exhausted after every meal? That means I'm not getting my nourishment. Do I feel like I constantly need to eat? So like, why do I need to eat all the time? Do I crave sugar and carbohydrates? Those are some signs that we're in insulin resistance. We can put ourselves into it and we can take ourselves out of it. So how we turn it around is not having sugar with meals. So like not having fruit with our meal, and not having sugar right after a meal, like a piece of candy, a piece of fruit, a piece of cake after we've eaten. And also to start spreading our meals out. So if we have breakfast, we don't eat anything else for 4 hours. Now, a person might not be able to do that right off the bat because they might have hypoglycemia as well. So we could start by increments, like eat, go 3 hours, then go 3.5 hours, then go 4 hours. What that does is it allows the cells to say, I think I'm starting to trust you, Karen. I think I'm starting to have some time without food where I can rest and repair and open my doors again to receiving a little bit of insulin. And we start nourishing our cells and saying, okay, cells, I'm going to stop feeding you all the time and stop feeding you so much sugar and let you trust me and come back to opening up.
And a lot of people are afraid to not eat all the time because, like you said, we're so brainwashed into not only 3 meals a day, but also snack between every meal, right?
Yes.
So how do you feel about intermittent fasting or even shortened window of eating?
I feel great about it. I could backtrack just a tad too. This has a lot to do with neurotransmitters. It has a lot to do with anxiety and depression because if we're in a constant state of digestion and a constant state of blood sugar balance, our tummies don't have the time and the space to rest, repair, and create neurotransmitters. And I think one of the big contributors to anxiety and depression too can be eating late. So I can tie this into intermittent fasting. And that is that I believe we should have dinner and nothing after. And if we eat late, our body is digesting food all night, not making neurotransmitters, which are made largely in the gut. When I was growing up, we had breakfast, lunch, and dinner, and that's it. We didn't have drive-throughs, and we didn't have lattes, and we didn't have snacking. So we sat down with the family and we had breakfast, lunch, and dinner. We worked and played between meals. We didn't eat after 6:30. Sometimes we had dessert, sometimes we didn't. Intermittent fasting is getting back to that. Its research has shown we need to get back to resting and repairing and rebuilding between meals and between dinner and the next day's breakfast. So it's really getting back to an old-fashioned way of eating. And I think it's fantastic. And I think it's one of the best ways to turn our blood sugar imbalance around, to build neurotransmitters, to hold on to muscle, to clear brain fog. I also think that a person needs to have a coach. So some people might do intermittent fasting and they eat a lot at night and they say, well, I'm not eating tomorrow till 2, so I'm going to have a great big dinner full of carbs and sugar. Well, then the body is digesting instead of repairing. It's coping instead of repairing. So I think we need some coaching around what do I eat prior to a fast? What do I eat coming off of a fast? And what do I eat during those meals that create the most satiety so that I don't have cravings for that 4 hours between each meal?
Yeah, it does take support to go through that initially, because for a lot of people, the idea of a fast can be very overwhelming, and start off slow and get support if you need it.
Yes, absolutely. And also for those of us who are recovering food and sugar addicts, it can set us up for a binge. So there's this mentality of, well, if I'm not going to eat for 4 hours or I'm not going to eat till noon tomorrow, then I better have as much sugar as I can right now. And I've experienced that. I've experienced the psychology of it setting me up for binge eating. And so I have to pace myself. I'm not doing a 24-hour fast. I just don't think that mentally I can do that with my sugar addiction history.
That's really interesting, because I know there is that fear for people to go into having a eating disorder. So
Yes.
people can have eating disorders, they can end up binging and purging. And so if you have those kind of issues, please talk to your doctor or seek help and get guidance, have a coach to help you, and not just take this on yourself if you know what your limits are. It's not for everybody, obviously, and you slowly build up to it, not go into a 24-hour fast. That's going to be really difficult for a lot of people. Just slowly, just maybe extend breakfast from 7 to 8 and then go slowly to 9 and see how you feel. And always check to see how you're feeling, right? Check in with yourself. If it's making you feel good, do more of that. If it's not making you feel good, don't do it.
I totally agree. And there are some people who could be intermittent fasting, and if they're not feeling fantastic and feeling lean and energetic, then what they're doing isn't working. How they're doing it isn't working out. And so you are absolutely right. It's not for everybody. And it's the same thing with the ketogenic diet. I think we need coaching around that. And it doesn't mean it's for everybody. And tuning into how we feel is the ultimate test.
Right.
Yeah.
And not just not for everybody, but not forever either. Even the ketogenic diet, all diets initially work. And I think it's a really good way to reset our system to do something different. But then the goal should be lifestyle changes that are going to last a lifetime, things that are going to be easy for you to do, and not feeling deprived or not feeling like you're constantly on this diet cycle. Just learning how to eat real foods. But if a diet like intermittent fasting or the ketogenic diet can help you get started on that, that's fine, but don't make it a permanent thing.
Yeah, absolutely. I couldn't agree more. And that's what I do in my practice is I help people find what works for them that's long lasting and sustainable. And I'm not a big fad or diet or conformist. And I've tried everything. And I couldn't agree more that everything worked for a while, but nothing was long lasting. But it helped me notice, oh, I'm going to take all these great things from ketogenic. And I'm going to take all these great things from the anti-inflammation diet and these things from fasting and kind of create this system that works for me out of all of the bonuses and the pluses and the things that do work out of some of those programs that are out there.
And for people that are serious about making these lifestyle changes, I think having a coach like you would make a huge difference in helping them reach their goals and not be frustrated and not waste a lot of time, money, energy on something that really they don't know what they're doing, and it could cause more problems than not. So hiring a coach, what I think would be a really good recommendation.
I think so too. And I try to promote food freedom, just the freedom from all the figuring out. I think a lot of people can become really tired and say, I'm so tired of trying to figure out what to eat and when to eat and how much to eat and my macros. And I help people get off of that cycle and into something that's just like, okay, I don't have to think about this anymore. I feel so much relief.
And it's so confusing. I mean, here I am. I've been kind of figuring it and tweaking it for myself for probably the past 20 years. And every time you think you have something, they come up with something else that, oh, you can't do that anymore. Like it started with the low fat. And then now it's eat a lot of fat. And then people are having too much fat and not knowing what really to eat. And so as professionals, it's confusing for us. So I can imagine somebody that really doesn't understand or know a lot about it yet, that it can be really overwhelming. And this is why I'm suggesting investing in a coach that can help you get the information you need, help you get started, and then you can take on from there. You did mention your website can you repeat where your website was about the sugar recovery, and then also where people can find you if they do want to work with somebody like you or even work with you to help them get back on track with sugar addiction and then even going through menopause?
Yeah, wonderful. So let's see. My website is called sugaraddictionrecovery.com. I also have a YouTube channel with very short 3-minute health snippets, and that is Karen Polanchek on YouTube. I think the best way to be would go to my website and then contact me, and I do complimentary discovery calls.
Oh, wonderful.
Yeah.
Thank you so much for being here. And this was such a great conversation, a great discussion. I know I learned a lot, and I think it's really important for us to keep talking about things like this because a lot of times we're so overwhelmed, we're so confused, but also we're afraid to have these conversations. I know when I was addicted to carbs, I didn't want anybody telling me to give any of that up. So sometimes really looking into why am I so resistant to eating something different or changing my way of eating, even though I'm not feeling good. So having these conversations normalizes that and makes it okay for us to have these talks.
Wonderful. Great. Thank you so much for having me. It's just been a real pleasure.
Thank you. Wow. Karen was forced to make changes due to the circumstances in her life, but you don't have to wait until your symptoms appear to improve the transition to menopause. Start by significantly reducing or removing sugar from your diet. Eat foods that can help you naturally balance your hormones, and follow the suggestions Karen shared in her interview. As always, remember that the information shared on this podcast is for educational purposes only, and you should always speak to a trained medical professional before making changes to your diet or lifestyle. To help you get started, I have created a sugar addiction guide that you can download for free. Go to transforminganxiety.com/19 to get your copy. To learn more about Karen, visit transforminganxiety.com/19. When you're there, go ahead and leave me a comment and let me know your thoughts about this episode. If you haven't already, you can show support for the Mental Health Break podcast by subscribing wherever you're tuning in from today. We have some great interviews lined up, and you don't want to miss a single episode. Subscribe today so you get notified when new episodes drop. I can't wait to see you here next week. Same time, same place. Bye for now.